Hey, successful breastfeeding fans. Welcome to today's video. I'm going to be talking about my personal experience with sleep and breastfeeding, telling you a little bit about how things went with my first, a tiny bit about how things went with my second, and then also I'm going to touch on how things were very different for my last baby and why. So if you follow us, you are probably familiar with the fact that we are advocates for co-sleeping and safe co-sleeping, and we are also advocates for bed sharing as long as you follow the rules. There are some very specific rules that you need to follow when you are bed sharing with your baby, and if you do not meet all of the criteria, you should absolutely not be sleeping with your breastfed baby in your bed. And this is very important. I cannot stress that enough. However, if you are not able to sleep with your baby because you don't meet all of the safe criteria, there are still ways to sleep near your baby by co-sleeping and keeping your baby nearby next to you at your bedside that are still safe even if you don't meet the criteria. I'm not going to dive into the safe criteria in this video because that's not the purpose of this video, but I am going to post a link to evidence-based information, including all of the research to back it up, on bed sharing, co-sleeping, and how to do those things safely. I will post that in the link to this, or in the description of this video. I'll leave the link so you guys can click on it, read it, check it out, and understand what you need to do to make sleeping with your baby safe. So now that I have that disclaimer out of the way, let's talk about sleeping with your baby. So I had my first baby when I was 25, and I was very excited. I had bought a mini crib because I had a very small house, and I had it set up in my room, and so excited to use it and have my baby co-sleep in my room with me. And lo and behold, my baby is born, and I cannot lay this kid down to save my life. If he was not in my arms with me holding him, he did not sleep. Everyone described him as very intense. And when we had gone to his pediatrician, she scared the crap out of us about sleep and was like, you must put him down on a separate surface on his back at all times. You know, don't sleep with your baby, you know, all of that kind of stuff. And so I left that appointment just in tears, like, what am I supposed to even do? I'm never going to sleep again. Oh my God, like, this is terrible. And I ended up sleeping in a very, very, very unsafe way for like the first week of his life because I was too scared to bed share with him. And I also didn't know how to do it safely. And so I thought that if I slept with my baby next to me in my bed, that I was just going to kill him. And that was what was going to happen. I didn't have any of the information about bed sharing at that time. So out of fear and desperation, I sat up in my bed with my baby for the first week of life, holding him in my arms or laying him on my chest while I slept like half sitting up on my back. This was not safe. It is not safe to sleep with your arms on top of your baby. The weight of your arms can be too much of them and it can stop them from breathing. And thank God we did not have anything happen. We also, it's not safe to hold your baby while you're sitting up, because if you are exhausted and you are sitting up and you are trying to keep yourself awake and you keep like dipping out and falling asleep, you are very likely going to suffocate your baby by falling asleep and holding them in this position. It's also not safe to fall asleep holding your baby in a recliner or on the couch. Laying with your baby on the couch is also not a safe way to sleep with your baby. And I was doing all of these things because my pediatrician had scared the crap out of me and I just didn't know what else to do. And thankfully, I was going to meetings. There was a support group that I was going to at the time, and it was a breastfeeding support group. And one of the other families there shared with me, I think it was a book about co-sleeping. I don't even remember what the book was called or what it was about, but co-sleeping was talked about in that book. And she's like, you need to read this. Please read this, learn about this. There's other options. And so I did. I read it. It talked about how to bed share safely. It talked about, like what kind of mattress you need to make it safe, how you should, arrange yourself in your bed to keep it safe, all of the things that you need to do to make sure that things are safe. And I didn't have any of the personal risk factors. I was not obese or overweight. I was not a smoker. I didn't smoke cigarettes. I wasn't drinking or doing any drugs. I wasn't taking any pain medication. So I didn't have any like codeine or anything like that. I think I took like ibuprofen, but that's not something that's going to make you cognitively not as aware as you need to be. I also, one of the other risk factors is being too tired. So I made sure that I was well rested, got my baby into a very safe setup in our room, in our bed, and I slept side lying with him next to me at the breast for the first night. And it was the first night we had any sort of peaceful sleep. And even though he woke up multiple times throughout the night to breastfeed, because I was laying there right next to him and literally all I needed to do was kind of twist my body and bring him closer to me to get him nursing at the breast, I had the best sleep that I had had in a very long time. I slept better than I did towards the end of my pregnancy. It took me a while to really let go of the anxiety that I was feeling about sleeping next to my baby. But the more I dove into the topic of bed sharing and co-sleeping, the more comfortable I ended up becoming with it. I found a ton of research from Dr. James McKenna, who studies this. And we ended up having a really beautiful bed sharing breastfeeding relationship. And he slept next to me in my bed until he was about 2.5 or so. And that was something I chose to do because I wanted him there and I loved sleeping next to him and cuddling him in the middle of the night. It wasn't until his brother was born, or I'm sorry, my second was born, that he finally was no longer sleeping like right next to me. He still slept close to me. And back then we had a very small house, so I didn't have another room for him to be in. And I was also going through a divorce shortly after my second baby was born. So my kids co-slept with me longer than they probably would have if we had a different situation. But again, it was what was working for us at the time. And I actually really enjoyed it because they were crazy kids running around playing so much. There wasn't a lot of time to slow down and snuggle and just be together. So for me, that was kind of a sacred time. When my second was born, my first baby, who was a toddler at the time, didn't sleep next to the baby because that would not be safe. The only person that should be sleeping next to the baby is the breastfeeding mother. So our setup was the baby was on one side of me, my toddler was on the other side, and I was always in the middle. They never slept next to each other. And I ended up bed sharing and breastfeeding with my second until she was about, gosh, I don't know, like probably about the same age, like 2.5. And then fast forward, I have a new partner and we are having a baby together. This is my third baby. This is a few years later. Both of my kids are now sleeping in their own rooms, sleeping in their beds, doing very well, sleeping in their own beds in their own rooms. So that's a big myth that co-sleeping can lead to unhealthy attachment and babies struggling to get out of your room and into a bed on their own. But honestly, I feel like it works very well, and it actually set my kids up for success because they trusted that in the middle of the night mommy was going to be there for them, and they ended up creating some healthy sleep associations and getting comfortable with their sleep habits. So that's another topic we can dive into on another day, but they were well established in their own rooms, in their own beds, doing very well, sleeping at night. And my third baby was born, and again, I'm with another partner, remarried, right? And we had a very different situation. I did bed share with my baby, but we only did so temporarily. And we had a very different setup. I actually would very often end up sleeping almost up. I slept upside down on my bed with my head at the foot of the bed. And we got a California king size bed so that my husband was very far away from me. And part of the reason that I did this is actually my husband has epilepsy and I didn't want him anywhere near this baby. So I was very far away from him in a different section on the bed. And he, since the time we have been together in the 13 years that I've known him, I've never actually witnessed him having a seizure. He's not had any sort of grand mal seizure episodes since we've been together. He's thankfully very well managed on his medication. But I did that out of precaution anyway, and just out of my own level of comfort. Because of his epilepsy, though, one thing that he needs to keep himself stable is very well rested sleep. And so for us, bed sharing in the newborn phase made a lot of sense because there was no night waking. There was no getting up out of bed and getting the baby. There was nothing he had to do. It was very easy for me to just feed her in the middle of the night. And then eventually it got to the point where she was starting to get a little bit more restless in bed once she got to be a little bit bigger. And I'm thinking she was probably about 3-4 months old at this point, and she was just the most active, wiggly baby, and she would just kick me all night long, and I kept like scooting farther and farther away and closer to the middle of the bed. And by, come morning, my husband's like clinging to the edge of a California king size bed, which is huge, right? And he's a very, very tall, skinny man, so he doesn't need a lot of space. And my baby and I have 3/4 of the bed. And so this situation ended up not working very well for him after a while, because he needed his sleep because of his medical condition in order to be stable and healthy. So we ended up transitioning her out of bed sharing much earlier than my others did. And I will also say that once we got her into her own sleep surface, she slept so much better. She really did. She slept longer at night and really valued having her own space, which is probably why she like starfished her way throughout the whole bed all night, like some sort of like wiggly sea creature. Because she just really didn't want to be touching me. She didn't want to be near me. She wanted to be near me when she nursed, but then she wanted her space. So that is what we ended up doing with her very early on. And it was just kind of amazing. Especially since, I'm in a new relationship with my husband. We'd been best friends for 13 years, but not married for that long, right? So having our bed back together and our own space was really nice, and a very different experience for me, because I did sleep with my kids for a very long time. And my husband, who had a daughter from his first marriage, also slept with her for a very long time, bed sharing and co-sleeping too. So for both of us, it was just a really nice experience. And I was very grateful that my daughter Riley was okay with being on a separate sleep surface. But I also think that if she hadn't been, and she didn't have that personality and that need, she would have stayed in bed with me a little bit longer than she did, just because having babies so close at night really does make things a whole lot easier. But hey, that's not how it went. That wasn't, the path that she had in mind. And I, along with advocating for co-sleeping and breastfeeding, I'm also a huge advocate for following your child's lead and letting your parenting style be very child-directed and child-led. And so, we take different approaches for all of our kids. And the same is true for breastfeeding. No breastfeeding relationship is going to be the same, because it's very dependent on your baby and their personality. And in this case, this is a really great example of that. So I hope that this was helpful. I hope you liked hearing a little bit more about me personally. If you like hearing more of these personal stories, let me know in the comments, because I will keep making more of these personal story videos and podcasts so that you can get to know me a little bit better, just as you guys get to share so much of yourselves with me. And I enjoy that so much. So thank you, thank you, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.